SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation. SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
රින් සුපිරි එලියා වෙළඳපොලේ අඩුම මිලකට රුපියල් 160යි.
Tonight, the blame game. SLMC-led Kinya Urban Council catches flack for approving ill-fated Kinya ferry that claimed 6 lives today. Not as free or fair. President's secretary responds to German envoy's one-way street claims in Sri Lanka German trade.
Trade is not fair, trade is not free, trade is not conducive for a decent relationship. How many countries do free trade? How many countries do fair trade? If that is the case, well, would have been in balance. Sri Lanka would have been in trade balance.
Booted out. Pesticide Registrar gets the sack for unsanctioned gazette greenlighting pesticide imports with glyphosate. Show us the details. Opposition MP calls for release of the full Easter report before accepting a public debate invite.
You were part of that commission that was appointed by the parliament to look into this Easter tax.
What we found were serious shortcomings in the way the country's entire intelligence infrastructure operates. That is the very reason why this whole thing got so messed up.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Tuesday, the 23rd of November, 2021.
Fair and Lovely will alut nama then Glow and Lovely. Fair and Lovely then Glow and Lovely.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik Ekanaik. 6 people lost their lives today after a ferry capsized on the Kurinchakeni Lagoon in Kenya that left scores more injured. It has been reported that the ferry service had been set up by the Kinya Urban Council until the construction of a bridge across the lagoon is completed. At around 7:30 this morning, a ferry operating across the Kurinchakeni Lagoon in Kenya of Trincomalee capsized in the middle of the lagoon. Even school children were aboard the ferry at the time of the incident. The locals, the police and the Navy were quick to act and attempted to save the drowned passengers. The drowned passengers were rescued and were hurried to the Kenya base hospital. But by then, 6 persons, including 3 school children, had succumbed. Among the dead are a 30-year-old mother and her 6-year-old son, a 3.5-year-old girl, 2 sisters and a 70-year-old man. Meanwhile, a 6-year-old girl was transferred to the Trincomalee Hospital in critical condition and she is currently receiving treatment at the intensive care unit. The police said that the rest of the passengers include 5 girls, 6 boys, 4 women and 4 men. The Navy and the police continued operations at the lagoon in search of possible missing persons, even into the evening. There are complaints from the locals that the ferry service in question was operated sans standards. It has been revealed that with the launch of construction of the new bridge across the Kurinchakeni Lagoon during the Government of Good Governance, the locals opted for a ferry service since the 3.5-kilometre alternative route was considered too long by the locals. It is also revealed that chairman of the Kinya Urban Council, SHM Nalim, had issued a permit to an individual named MAM Riaz to transport passengers across the Kurinchakeni Lagoon. The Kinya Urban Council is under the Sri Lanka Muslim Congress. The relevant permit has been issued under the conditions of safe transport of passengers, transport of school children free of charge, and assessment of the ferry's condition from time to time. Following today's tragic incident, people in the area blocked the road at the Buhari Junction and protested against the officials of the relevant development project. The protesters then made their way to the residence of Sri Lanka Muslim Congress Trincomalee District MP, SM Tawfiq in Kinya, and pelted stones. They accused the MP of failing to put in place measures to prevent such incidents during the project. It was also MP Tawfiq who pioneered the project. Disgruntled locals also staged a protest near the Kinya Divisional Secretariat, and their aggressive behaviour led to a tense situation. The post-mortem of the deceased were due to be conducted this evening, and it was met with protests by the locals near the Kinya hospital. That too led to a tense situation. In the meantime, the tragedy was also a topic taken up in Parliament today.
මේ පාරුව ක්‍රියාත්මක කරපු ආකාරය ගැනත් එහි නිත්‍යානුකූල භාවය පිළිබඳවත් කිසි විධිමත් පරීක්ෂණයක් පවත්වන්නයි කියන යෝජනාව මම මේ සභාවට ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා.
මේ ප්‍රවාහනය කරන්නට ලබා දුන් මේ ෆෙරි එකට කිසිම අනුමැතියක් නැහැ. අනුමැතියෙන් තොරව මෙවැනි ප්‍රමිතියෙන් අඩු මේ ෆෙරි එකකට මගී ප්‍රවාහනයට ඉඩකඩ ලබා දීම තුල තමයි මේ ඛේදවාචකය සිදු වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ.
මේ පාලම හදද්දී අතුරු මාර්ගයක් මේ ජනතාවට පාවිච්චි කරන්න මාර්ගයක් ලබා දුන්නේ නැහැ. මාර්ගයක් ලබා දීලා තිබුණා. හැබැයි මාර්ගය කිලෝමීටර් 3ක් දුරයි. ඒ ජනතාව එක පාවිච්චි කරන්න කැමති නැහැ. ඒක තමයි මට ලැබුණු පණිවිඩය. ඊළඟට මේ ෆෙරි සර්විස් එක දාලා තියෙන්නේ නගර සභාවේ. නලිම් චෑමන් අර්බන් කවුන්සිල් කින්නියා. මේක මම හිතන්නේ සජබේ එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ මුස්ලිම් කොංග්‍රස් එකට. ඒගොල්ලෝ තමයි අවසරය දීලා තියෙන්නේ මේ ෆෙරි සර්විස් එකට. මේ දරුවෝ අරන් යනකොට කිසිම ලයිෆ් ජැකට් එකක් දාලා නැහැ. මට දැනගන්න ලැබිලා තියෙන විදිහට මම ඇහුවා නියෝජ්‍ය පොලිස්පතිතුමාට. මම පොලිස්පතිතුමාට කතා කරුවා. මම කිව්වා නීතිය ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න කියලා. හිතා මේක රජයට ඇඟිල්ල දික් කරන්න හදන්න එපා. හැබැයි අපි මොනවාට ඔබතුමා නැකිట్లా කතා කරුවත් මම නැකිట్లా කතා කරුවත් ප්‍රේමදාස මහත්තයා කතා කරුවත් ඒ ළමයිට දරුවන්ට දෙමව්පියන්ට පණ එන්නේ නැහැ. අන්න මේක ඇත්තටම මිනිමරුමක් හැටියටයි මම නම් දකින්නේ.
අපිට මෙතන ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙන ගරු මහා මාර්ග ඇමතිතුමනි එතන මීටර 160ක විතර පාලමක් ඉදි වෙන්නේ. විදියට ඒ පාර සඳහා විකල්පයක් තියෙනවා. කිලෝමීටර් 3.5ක් කියන්නේ විකල්පයක් නෙමෙයි.
Meanwhile, Eastern Province Governor Anuradha Yahampath has ordered the Commissioner of Local Government to immediately launch an investigation into the ferry capsize. A special committee has already been appointed under the Secretary of the Provincial Ministry of Roads to conduct the investigation.
Big 3.
Secretary to the President Dr. P.B. Jayasundara says that if all countries practiced free and fair trade in reality, all nations world over would equally enjoy trade balances. His remarks came as a response to German envoy Holger Subert on the imbalance of trade between Sri Lanka and Germany.
Speaking at an event organised by the German Embassy's delegation of German industry and commerce in Sri Lanka titled Top German Brands in Sri Lanka held yesterday, German envoy Holger Subert outlined his nation's Indo-Pacific strategy, which he explained was founded on two pillars, namely the importance of the region in international relations and free and fair shipping lanes. Ambassador Subert also touched on what he termed the one-way street that is German-Sri Lankan trade, which he says needs to change very soon.
The German government decided on an Indo-Pacific strategy. This is, at first sight, this is quite astounding, because for such a faraway country, why should we have a strategy on the Indo-Pacific? Is there any hidden agenda by the Germans? Are we searching for new zones of influence? What's the background of this decision? I think it's neither of those. I think it's basically two things, two pillars of this Indo-Pacific strategy. Is first of all that we are convinced that the future of international relations will be shaped in the region of Indo-Pacific, will be shaped here in the direct neighborhood of Sri Lanka. And secondly, the main pillar of our Indo-Pacific strategy is free and open shipping lines. We are for fair trade. This is also the reason why mid-January we are expecting a German warship in Colombo, but that's not a political or military statement. It's basically a statement for free and open shipping lines. The trade balance between our two countries, the gap is further increasing. So Sri Lanka is today exporting to Germany 3 times as much in value as Germany is exporting to Sri Lanka. This means that our bilateral trade is getting somewhat of a one-way street, of a one-sided affair. And speaking about free trade and fair trade, these import restrictions are neither fair nor free. So I know the reasoning behind. Mr. Secretary, don't get me wrong, we've talked so many times. However, I just wanted to make that point that trade becoming a one-sided affair is, of course, of concern to the German government.
In response, Secretary to the President Dr. P.B. Jayasundara stated that the concept of free and fair trade is not one that is in actuality practiced by most nations, and explained that if it was, then there would be a global balance in trade and not a one-way street as claimed by the German envoy.
The country as a whole, while Germany may blame us, trade is not fair, trade is not free, trade is not conducive for a decent relationship. Same argument valid for some other countries in the opposite direction. In total, this nation is importing twice the nation export. Where does the free and fair trade exist then in the global sense? Right now, the country which is struggling after a severe setback with 3 different waves of COVID is hit by global oil prices. World leaders don't know what to do. They are asking inventories to be released now. Don't come to the market. Release your stocks. Prices may go down. Nobody knows what the answer. World shipping cost has gone up. Commodity prices are surging. We love free trade. We love fair trade as well. Probably pretty easy to talk free trade with German because it's free trade. How many countries do free trade? How many countries do fair trade? If that is the case, world would have been in balance. Sri Lanka would have been in trade balance. In the meantime, countries also saddled with debt, $4.5 billion debt has to be honored. They are also for $2 billion for sovereign bond market, which has become popular among the European countries, pension funds, provident funds, saving institutions. They have invested in Sri Lankan bonds and they had confidence that this nation will honor. We have honored them to date. We don't have reserves. That's true. How do you generate reserves? Unless you generate an export surplus, you can't generate reserves by borrowing. You have to generate surplus. That has not happened here. Country also not the country I used to see. Private sector borrowing is as high as the domestic government debt. So they also have to service. They also don't have earning sources. Exports are down, remittance down, tourism disappeared. Ports and airports technically didn't have much business until very recently. So that's the overall macro picture that we had. So we wanted to honor our commitment and choice forced to have trade or debt default.
Now then, following the passing of the second reading of the Appropriation Bill yesterday by 93-vote majority, opposition parliamentarians took issue with the seating arrangements of opposition members who voted with the government. The main opposition, Samagi Jana Balawegaya, urged the Speaker to take action to reseat the members in question in the government ranks, likening them to having spies in their midst. However, Leader of the House, Dinesh Gunawardena, was swift to remind the opposition about their own conduct during the government of good governance.
තවර නියෝග 3 යටතේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ ආසන පැනවීම වරින් වර ඔබතුමාට වෙනස් කරන්න පුළුවන්. විශේෂයෙන් මේ ඉදිරිපෙළ විපක්ෂයේ ආසන පැනවීමේදී ගරු අතුරලේ රතන හිමියෝ ඒ වගේම අරිසබ්රි රහීම් කියන මන්ත්‍රීවරු දෙපළ මේ විපක්ෂයේ ඉදිරිපෙළ ඉන්නේ. ඔවුන් හැමදාම ආණ්ඩුවත් එක්ක ඡන්ද දෙනවා ආණ්ඩුවත් එක්ක කටයුතු කරනවා. මම හිතන්නේ ඒක හරි වැරදි අප කරු කතාරංග විපක්ෂයේ ඉදිරිපෙළ ආණ්ඩු පක්ෂයේ නියෝජිත දෙන්නෙක් ඉන්නවා කියන එක නිකන් හරියට ඔත්තුකාරයෝ දෙන්නෙක් ඉන්නවා. ඒ නිසා ඔබතුමා ඊට අවස්ථා දෙකකට කලින් මේක මම මතක් කරා. ඒ නිසා ගරු රතන හිමියන්ට ඉදිරි පෙළ අසුනක් ඕන අපිට ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ ආණ්ඩු පක්ෂය දුන්නාට ඒ වගේම අලිසබ්රි රහීම් කියන මන්ත්‍රීතුමා හැමදාමත් ආණ්ඩුවත් එක්ක ඉන්නේ මේක ඔබතුමාගෙන් දිගින් දිගටම මට මේකට විසඳුමක් නැහැ ඒක කරුණාකරලා මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ විසඳලා දෙන්න කතා කරමු
මන්ත්‍රීතුමා ඒක පක්ෂවල තීරණයක් ඒකේ ඒ අදාළ පක්ෂ වලින් ගත්තු තීරණයක් කරුණාකරලා ඒකට අපිට මැදිහත් වෙන්න පුළුවන් කමක් නැහැ
මං හිතන්නේ මේ අපේ නලින් බණ්ඩාර මහත්මයා පොඩ්ඩක් මේ සම්ප්‍රදාය පොඩ්ඩක් කියවොත් හොඳයි කියලා මං හිතන්නේ මොකද හේතුව ඕනෑම පක්ෂයක පාර්ලිමේන්තු මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙක් ඒ පක්ෂයෙන් එනවා නම් සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඉදිරිපෙළ ආසනයක් දෙන එක සාමාන්‍ය සම්ප්‍රදායයි. තුමා විපක්ෂ ඉඳලා ආණ්ඩුවට සහයෝගය දෙනවද නැද්ද කියන එක ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ තියෙන පුද්ගලික තීරණයක්. ඔබතුමාට අයිතියක් නැහැ ඒගොල්ලන්ව ආණ්ඩුවේ හින්දා මේ පැත්තට තල්ලු කරන්න හරි මෙහෙම කරන්න. මොකද හේතුව ඔබතුමා වුණත් ඒක පුද්ගලිකව වෙනම ඉල්ලුවොත් එහෙම සජබෙන් අයින් වෙලා ඔබතුමාටත් මේ ඉස්සරහා ඉදිරිපෙළ අසුනක් තියෙන ඔබතුමාට අයිතියක් තියෙනවා.
කලකට පෙර මුස්ලිම් මන්ත්‍රීවරු කීප දෙනෙක් ආණ්ඩුවට සහාය
නායකයෝ දුන්නා. මම ඔබතුමාගේ ඉල්ලීමක් කෙරුවා ඒ අය ආණ්ඩුවේ ගොඩේ දාන්න කියලා. අපේ ගොඩේ නෙමෙයි. ඔබතුමා ඒ අනුව ඒගොල්ලෝ වාඩි කෙරෙව්වා ආණ්ඩු පක්ෂ මන්ත්‍රීවරුන්ගෙක් එක්ක. ඉතින් දැන් මේ දෙපළේදී අපේ ගොඩේ. එහෙම ඉන්න බෑ.
මේ සම්ප්‍රදාය තීරණය කරන්නේ ගරු කතානායකතුමා. මේ සම්ප්‍රදාය පිළිබඳ කරුණු ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් තීරණය ගන්නේ මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙක්ගේ ආසනය සම්බන්ධ ඔබතුමා. ඒක තමයි සම්ප්‍රදාය ඉතිහාසයේ පුරා පාර්ලිමේන්තුව පුරාම සිද්ධ වෙලා තියෙන අවුරුදු 70කට වැඩි දැන්. ඒක නොදැනගෙන නෙමෙයි මේ කතා කරන්නේ. ඒ වගේම නොදැනගෙන කතා කරෙන්නම රට රවට්ටන්න පුළුවන්. රට රවට්ටපු කාලේ අමතක නිසා මේ කතා කරන අයම මේ පැත්තේ ඉඳගෙන ආණ්ඩු කරන කාලේ මා අද ඉන්න තනතුරේ ඉන්නකොට සභාන සංවිධායකතුමා තනතුරේ ඉන්නකොට TN එකේ සුළු මන්ත්‍රී සංඛ්‍යාව විපක්ෂ නායකවරයා කරා. ඒ මන්ත්‍රීවරුන්ට මුල් ආසන දීලා අපේ හිටපු අමාත්‍යවරු පවා දෙවෙනි ආසවලින් එහාට තල්ලු කරා. හැමදාම ඡන්දේ දුන්නේ ආණ්ඩුව එක්ක. වචනයක්වත් නැගිටලා කිව්වද සම්ප්‍රදාය විරෝධී කියලා. අපි විපක්ෂ නායක ධූරය වෙනස් කරන්න කියලා කිව්වා. නමුත් කවදාවත් අපි සම්ප්‍රදාය විරෝධී කියලා කිව්වේ නෑ. වකට හිටපු කතානායකතුමා ඒ වෙලාවේ තීරණය කරා ඒ පැත්තේ විපක්ෂ නායකකම දීලා මුල් පෙළිය දීලා ඒක හරි කියලා ලක්ෂ්මන් කිරියල් මැතිතුමා නැගිටලා කතා කරා. සභානායකයට හැමදාම ඡන්දේ දුන්නේ ආණ්ඩුව එක්ක. ආණ්ඩුව එහෙනම් එදා කියන්න තිබුණා ආණ්ඩුවගේ පැත්තේ ඉඳගන්න කියලා. කිසිම සාධාරණ සත්‍යයක් හෝ පදනමක් හෝ ජේෂ්ඨත්වයක් හෝ සම්ප්‍රදායක් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ ගරු කළා නෙමෙයි මේ හැසිරෙන්නේ. මොකක් කර දෙයක් ඔබතුමාට හැමදාම උදේ කරදරයක් ප්‍රශ්නයක් ඉදිරිපත් කිරීම කනගාටුදායක තත්ත්වයට ලංකා පාර්ලිමේන්තුව පත් කරන්න එපා. විරුද්ධ පක්ෂයේ සංවිධායකතුමා විශේෂයෙන් මං ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා එහෙම හැසිරෙන්න එපයි කියලා.
Meanwhile, the subject of the Easter attacks were also taken up, with Samagi Janabalawege MP Rauf Hakim responding to an invitation for a public debate issued by State Minister Kanchana Wijesekara. The Sri Lanka Muslim Congress leader agreed to the debate, however requested for full access to the 22-volume Easter Attack Commission report beforehand.
Now, first of all, let me, in reply to Honourable Kanchana Wijesekara, he raised his issue of this පාස්කු ඉරිදා සිද්ධිය පිළිබඳව විවාදයකට එන්න ලෑස්ති වෙන්නයි කියලා කිව්වා. අපිට ඒ විස්තර ටික අරන් එන්නයි කියලා කිව්වා. නමුත් කරුණා කරලා අපට අර වෙලුම් 22ක් තියෙනවා. ඒ 22 බාර දෙන්න. ඒක කියවලා අපට ඕන තරම් ඒ විවාදයට එන්න පුළුවන්.
Honourable Minister Kanchana Wijesekara.
I'm
not disturbing you, Honourable Member. අපි මේ සභාවේ ඔබතුමන්ලගේ විපක්ෂයේ නියෝජනය කරන මන්ත්‍රීවරු විටින් විට පාර්ලිමේන්තු වරප්‍රසාද වලට යට වෙලා ඔවුන් දන්නා කරුණු කියලා මෙතන අසත්‍ය ප්‍රචාර කරනවා. අපි ඉල්ලීමක් කරන්නේ අපි දන්න කරුණු කියන්නම් ඔබතුමන්ලා දන්න කරුණු කියන්න ලැබිලා තියෙන තොරතුරුත් එක්ක එන්න විවාදයකට මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවෙන් එළියේ ඕනම රූපවාහිනී නාලිකාවක් තෝරගන්න. හැබැයි ඔබතුමන්ලගේ මන්ත්‍රීවරු එන්නේ නැහැ. ඒකට හරෙන් ප්‍රනාන්දු මනුෂ්‍ය බයයි. ඒකට එන්නේ නැහැ. මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුව ඇතුළේ ඇවිල්ලා කෑ ගැහුවට එළිය ගිහලා මේක කතා කරන්නේ
නැහැ. අපිත් එන්න ලෑස්ති. ඒ වෙලුම් ටික අපිට ලාභ දුන්නා නම් අපිට පුළුවන් ඒක කරන්න කියලායි මම කියන්නේ.
I ask you a question. I'm not going to disturb you. You were part of that commission that was appointed by the parliament to look into these Easter attacks. What was your observations? What was the conclusion that you came to?
Honourable Minister, Honourable Rauf Hakim, please continue.
Honourable Deputy Chairman of Committees, it's good that he raised this question. In our findings, what we found was that there are serious shortcomings in the way the country's entire intelligence infrastructure operates. There had been various problems. That is the very reason why this whole thing got so messed up. There were so many agencies, so many people sending notes to different...
Member, I tabled a letter now that was written to your minister who was in charge of the police force. It has been communicated to him by the intelligence chief that this was going to happen in 2018, 1 year before the Easter attack. But you all failed to take action upon
Honourable Rauf Hakim.
Not only that, letters sent to the Attorney General Department had not been looked into for more than 10-15 months. That's the fact that we discovered.
Now then, the cases filed against former IGP Pujit Jayasundara and former Defence Secretary Hemisri Fernando pertaining to these Sunday terror attacks were taken up today. During the proceedings, former Director of the State Intelligence Service Nilantha Jayawardena gave evidence as a witness for the state. The cases filed against former Inspector General of Police Pujit Jayasundara and former Defence Secretary Hemisri Fernando over the failure to prevent these Sunday terror attacks were taken up today before the Colombo High Court trial at bar. 855 charges each were read out against the duo yesterday. During today's proceedings, the case against the former IGP was the first to be taken, with the main witness of the plaintiff, former director of the State Intelligence Service Nilantha Jayawardena giving evidence. He told the court though some people attempted to depict the Lord Buddha statue vandalism in Mavanella as the action of vandals, he informed the then IGP and the senior DIG in charge of the CID that it was in fact an act of extremism perpetrated with the knowledge of Zahran Hashim. He added that in May of 2018 he informed authorities of the danger of letting Zahran Hashim, who propagates extremism, roam free in society, and that he also informed his recommendation to deploy a police team to arrest Zahran. What's more, Jayawardena told the court that in 2016 he submitted over 340 reports to the IGP and the Defence Secretary pertaining to IS ideology propagators. He also noted that in 2017 he identified 94 individuals who spread extremism in the country and informed the Defence Secretary to look into them. Further examination of evidence was then fixed for tomorrow. Afterwards, the case against former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando was taken up. Deputy Solicitor General Sudarshan De Silva, appearing for the plaintiff, submitted several documents from the report of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry which probed the attacks to the court. With the legal counsels of the defence requesting more time to peruse the documents, the case was deferred until tomorrow. In the meantime, the case against Naufur Maulavi and 24 other suspects filed over the Easter Sunday terror attacks was taken up before a 3-member High Court bench consisting of judges Damit Totawatta, Amal Ranaraja and Navaratna Marasinghe. All 25 suspects were produced before court amid heavy security. The bench decided to take the case up again on the 12th of January next year. We will see you shortly after this break. Bear with us.
මිලියන 18.8 නිවස ලක්ෂ 5ක් ගෙවා දැන්ම වෙන් කරවා ගන්න මල්බෙරි රෙසිඩන්ස්.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, Minister of Agriculture Mahindananda Alutgamage has taken measures to remove the Registrar of Pesticides from his designation and conduct an investigation against him. The decision was made due to him revoking a Gazette notification that banned pesticides containing 5 ingredients, including glyphosate. On the 22nd of December 2014, the government banned the usage, offer for sale or sale of pesticides including 5 ingredients, among which is glyphosate. The move was effective in the districts of Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa, Kurunegala and Monragala, as well as in some divisional secretariat divisions of the country. The dramatic increase of kidney disease in those areas was the reason behind the ban. However, yesterday, a Gazette notification was issued by the Registrar of Pesticides, Dr. J. A. Sumit, revoking the relevant Gazette. With that being the case, Minister of Agriculture Mahindananda Alutgamage instructed the Secretary of Agriculture to obtain an explanation from the Registrar of Pesticides over his actions. And at Parliament today, the subject minister revealed that instructions were given to remove the Registrar of Pesticides over his unlawful act.
ඒ ග්ලයිෆොසේට් තහනම නැවත පනවන්න අවශ්‍ය උපදෙස් දුන්නා. මේ පුද්ගලයා විසින් මීට කලිනුත් රසායනික සමාගමකට අවශ්‍ය පරිදි පලිබෝධනාශක ගෙන්වන්න කටයුතු කරලා මොහොත විරුද්ධව විනය පරීක්ෂණයක් පැවැත්වෙනවා. ඒ රජය මේ තීන්දුව ගනිද්දී අපිට අමාත්‍යාංශයේ තියෙන ලොකුම අභියෝගය තමයි මේ රසායනික පොහොර සමාගම් රසායනික පොහොර ආනකරුවන් විසින් අපේ අමාත්‍යාංශයේ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව නිලධාරීන්ත් එක්ක පහුගිය කාලය පුරාම කටයුතු කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ නිසා මීට කලිනුත් පලිබෝධනාශක ගෙන්වීමට කටයුතු කිරීමේදී කැබිනට් පත්‍රිකාවක් ඉදිරිපත් කිරීමේදී මේ පුද්ගලයා විසින් එක සමාගම පක්ෂව යෝජනා එවලා තිබුණා කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයට දෙවනි වරත් ඒ විදිහටම එවලා තිබුණා. ඒ නිසා ඔහුට විරුද්ධව දැනටමත් විනය පරීක්ෂණයක් පැවැත්වෙනවා. ග්ලයිෆොසේට් තහනම ඉදිරියටත් මේ රටේ ක්‍රියාත්මක වන බව සඳහන් කරන්න කැමැතියි.
In the meantime, discussions were worked off this evening between the Minister of Agriculture and pesticide importers on the topic of importing pesticides and fungicides necessary for vegetables. During the meeting, the subject minister instructed the company representatives to sell the available stocks of pesticides and fungicides at concessionary rate. Now, shifting our focus towards the pandemic situation, health experts say that imposition of a lockdown during the looming festive season depends entirely on the behaviour of the public as well as the level of the virus spread at the time. The month of December always brings with it a festive spirit. The streets are expected to be bustling with people who go about doing their shopping for the season. But this also brings back bitter memories. Similar behaviour during the Sinhala and Tamil New Year back in April gave rise to a third wave of COVID, the likes of which the island had never seen before. The country paid the price for the people's irresponsible behaviour, both with lives and in economic strife. Over 13,000 people died with COVID since the April festivities, And with the current daily caseload hovering around the 700 mark, the wave still isn't over. Restrictions had to be put in place as a last resort, knowing very well that it would leave the country's economy in ruin. And with the restrictions lifted, will the government yet again appeal to the better nature of the people, or will restrictions make another appearance?
Everything depends on the behavior of the person and people of the country, as well as the current disease levels that might be prevailing in that time. So the decision will be taken only by the government, and if such decision is taken, it is not surprising basically because we have learned many lessons in the previous year during this same time, as well as during the New Year time in April, where the large number of people gathered unnecessarily, which resulted in high number of cases during both occasions. We have to do our shopping or whatever the things as early as possible nowadays, and don't go into a situation where everyone is congested and gathered in shopping malls in large numbers. And also we know that certain events are being organized, and always try to adhere to the limits imposed for these events, as well as get the guidance and the supervision of the local health authorities to arrange those events. However, I would encourage and request everyone to refrain from organizing such events as much as possible because of the crucialness of this situation at this moment, where even a slightest mistake can lead to a serious situation in the coming months.
With yesterday's return to school of grades 6, 7, 8 and 9, the island's entire school system is now up and running. Though there have been continuous attempts to make the stakeholders of the education sector, including students, aware about the importance of adhering to health protocols, there have been lapses. Given the prolonged disruption the education sector faced due to the pandemic and striking teacher trade unionists, another spell on the sidelines will be disastrous for students.
The children should wear face masks all the time as much as possible, and also prevent any situations where the meals are taken face to face together in crowded places. Try to make sure that they are taking the meals seated on one direction, so after they are removing their face masks to have the meal, will not create a situation where droplets are spread to the other students. And the parents, teachers and all others also should give an example. And also during the transportation, we have to be very careful. They should be wearing the mask all the time and refrain from unnecessary shouting and other interactions as much as possible, and refrain from touching the surfaces of the vehicle unnecessarily. You need to get your hands sanitized wherever possible.
On the vaccination front, another batch of Pfizer jabs landed in Sri Lanka this morning. It contained 405,990 doses to be used in the country's booster dose rollout. Yesterday alone, 59,250 persons had obtained the booster. By last evening, a total of 324,633 persons had received the booster shot. Meanwhile, 13,716,871 people had been fully inoculated by last evening, with close to 2.2 million awaiting the second dose. Join us again after this short break. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, headline inflation increased to 8.3% in October 2021 from 6.2% in September, driven by monthly increases in prices of items in both food and non-food categories. Meanwhile, food inflation increased to 11.7% in the month from 10% in September, while non-food inflation also increased to 5.4% in October 2021 from 3% in September. The monthly change in the NCPI was recorded at 2.12% in October due to the increases observed in prices of items in both food and non-food categories, which were 0.89% and 1.23% respectively. Accordingly, within the food category, prices of milk powder and rice increased, while prices in the non-food category recorded increases in housing, water, electricity and gas. Further, year-on-year core inflation increased to 7.2% in October 2021 from 4.8% in September. Now, taking a look at the Colombo Bourse, the all-share price index gained 111.36 points to end at 10,928.60, while the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks ended at 3,755.74, following a gain of 57.62 points. Market turnover was 6.6 billion rupees today. Now here's Dimantha Mathi with a brief report on today's market performance.
Today we saw again the market rushing back up for the second time during this week. So overall, diversified financial segment is the sector that is leading the way. However, the previous retail favorites in the market are sort of slowing down significantly, and we are seeing a lot of selling pressure in those counters. Today we saw 6.6 billion rupees of turnover with 47,000 transactions during the day.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.